Happy Monday. Let me just get all of my stuff situated here and make sure that I am live. Okay, perfect. Let's turn this camera on. All right. Hopefully, you're having a fantastic Monday. I know that it's really cold here, and we just got a downpour of snow over the weekend. And so now it is incredibly cold outside. But we're going to hop right into this. Welcome, welcome. My name is Amy, and I have a master's degree in education. And my purpose and passion in life is to help other people get out of that rabbit hole to be able to find their joy again, because I know all too well what it feels like to be stuck into that space. And it is not a good place to be. And have definitely been in points in my life where I have felt like it is entirely impossible to get out of that place. And so I am here to help you to be able to navigate through those as well. All right. So welcome, welcome. I love to know where you're from. So if you want to hop on the chat and just say hello. Remember, depending on where you're hopping on from, I can't always see your name. Sometimes it just tells me that it's a Facebook user, depending on which one of my platforms you're coming in. So if I don't address you directly by your first name, just know that it's not personal. I just can't see it. All right. So tonight we are talking about your inner warning system. So this is a really amazing thing that we all have. If you know how to use it, it's just that it's probably been shut down for you because it gets shut down for most of us when we are children. So let's talk a little bit more about how exactly this works. Because hi Lisa, what's your weather like there? Um, this system that you have in place, like what a beautiful thought that we have this warning system that's basically telling us what we should be doing at all times. And we don't even have to be fretting and freaking out about things. And so we're going to dive into this and I'm going to tell you more about it. So let me make sure I have my screen in the right place so I can go. There we go. All right. So first of all, I have to say hello, Pixie, welcome. These images, I'm so excited because I created them. Are they not adorable? So I was like, what to me expresses that beautiful place that you are in when you're a child and you just have nothing to worry about and you're so full of this beautiful innocent energy and you don't care. I always talk about, because I think it's something that I remember, you don't care if your socks don't match, you don't care if you're dressed right, you don't care if you have, chocolate all over your face. That spot in your life where you're just feeling that beautiful innocent zen. And so as children, this is something that we have. It's um, something we're naturally born with, and we're in that beautiful innocent state. And you hear me talk about it all the time. Until you're about the age of 7, everything is being 11 degrees. Yeah, I think it's supposed to get to negatives here tonight. So we're freezing as well. But until you get to about the age of 7, you're such a sponge. You're being taught and told everything by people that are supposed to be your nurturers and your caregivers and the people that love you. And so, unfortunately, we just haven't developed our filters yet as children. And so, everything that's coming into us, we don't really have that capability yet to decide, like you do as an adult, whether or not you want to take something in as a belief. And so, because of that, we are just really susceptible to what I call having things smashed out of us that are really part of how we're designed, and that beautiful divine ability that we have to make decisions and to live our life in this authentic space. So, I love this kid in the paint, right? It's like he doesn't care. No one's yelling at him. He's splashing and making a mess and just living life to its best. And with like the kids in the meadow, right? It's like, really just want to grab your tribe and go. Okay, so here's how we get into this place of taking away this beautiful intuitive connection. So, a couple of things happen when we are kids. One of them is these toxic phrases that start to accumulate. And now I want you to think of things that happened to you before the age of 7. Think of it as, you start as this beautiful little baby cherub. And then if you want to imagine, however it makes sense to you, you start getting these layers of conditioning, layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And it's almost like putting on a personality mask. You become this identity that is completely different than who you really are. All right? And part of this is because we are trying to make people happy. We're trying to make people happy because we do learn at a really young age the path of least resistance. If I make my mom, my dad, my teacher, whoever that is, if I follow directions and I do what I'm told, I usually get a reward for it. If you eat everything on your plate, you can have XYZ. If you do your homework, you can play, your video games or do whatever. And so you're like, oh, if I do this, even if I'm not aligned with it and it's totally something I'm resisting, I get rewarded for it. And so we get into this space where we just start doing everything to please because we know that the reward is worth it. We love to be appreciated. We love to be accepted. And so we do things. And then also we're watching, right? We're observing. So if I see my brother or I see my sister or I see my friend do something and they're rewarded for it, I naturally want to follow that behavior pattern, even if it's really far out of alignment with who I really am. And so we get into the space where we're just not being our authentic self. Now, the second part of this is as children, we are really, really connected intuitively to the divine, to whatever that is for you. I always tell people I like to keep this thought process of I believe in everything and I believe in nothing at all. It makes it so that when I work with my clients, I'm not being biased against their religious beliefs or their spiritual beliefs or whatever. So, it doesn't create a resistance if my client is and it is doesn't believe in God, or if my client is very much aligned with traditional Christian beliefs, or if my client believes in something completely outside of anything that I've ever been taught in my life. It doesn't matter to me. I believe that what resonates for you is your truth. And so it really doesn't matter. I was just like, so you'll hear me refer to it as I just like to call it divine energy because I feel like that sort of encompasses everything. Um, so when you are a child, you're really connected intuitively to that source. Then think of it as like I like to imagine it as like this beautiful light, right? It's connecting you to the divine, to higher energy source, and it's this beautiful channel that goes both ways. And so we hear children say things where we're like, what did they just say? Or, you know, I know, for example, like when Tayson was my son was 3 years old, is when his little sister passed away. And he would talk about being able to see her for about, I would say, the first like month or two. He would talk about her being in the room, he would talk to her. And, his interaction with her was very minimal because she was in the hospital from the moment she was born for 26 days. And I think Jason actually maybe only saw her 2 or 3 times just because of the distance and, making sure that we weren't bringing any, um, pathogens into, the spot where Kinley was because she was in the, critical care for, cardiac. And so he really didn't interact with her very much, but he talked about her a lot after she passed away for the first couple of months. And so we see that children, what you want to call it, that the veil is very thin for them. Being able to be intuitive is so natural for them. And so they talk about things and then we start smashing it out, right? Because we say things like, if your kid says, oh, I saw someone, and that physically that person wasn't there, then we start telling the child, you didn't see anything. It's your imagination. Okay. And it starts to become this norm where we're like, wait a minute. So as we get older, we natural or not naturally, but we culturally start getting told like stop using your imagination, right? The moment you start into school, you don't get to color or make your project the way that you really want to, right? So let's say that the teacher gives you shapes and she gives you or he gives you three different shapes. They're white. One is really big. The next one is slightly, smaller. And the next one is much smaller, and you're supposed to make a snowman on a construction paper, and you decide that instead of making a snowman, you come up with some really creative way and you make flowers, and each one of these round things is the center of the flower, and you draw petals on your paper and you decorate it and you make all kinds of stuff onto this paper. And the teacher, what happens to you? You get criticized because you didn't follow the directions. I specifically remember, right, being in school and having an example up on the board. And this is what your project is supposed to look like when you're finished. And so, same goes. We're taught this is the proper way to speak. This is the proper way to spell. This is the proper way to do everything. Dress, do your hair, right? I was thinking today, I don't know why, but on my way home from work, I was sitting at the stoplight and I don't know why, but I started thinking about my hair. And I was like, man, I wish when I was a kid, like I would have understood my hair, because being an adult at the age that I'm at now, I recognize that I have a very unique hair structure and pattern and wavelength. And it's something I absolutely despised when I was a kid because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I would try to brush my hair out. And as an adult, I know that that is not something that I do. I never take a brush to my hair as an adult, because when you brush hair that's the texture of mine, it makes it 7 times bigger. In fact, when it's Halloween, I can dress up as a witch and get the most amazing hair, because the moment that I start brushing it, it just goes crazy. A little bit of hairspray and I can have hair out to here. And so as a kid, I didn't know that. So I was just trying to conform and do what everyone else does, right? What are you taught? When you wake up in the morning, brush your hair. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. When you wake up in the morning, brush your hair, brush your teeth, brush your hair, right? So I would brush my hair and it would be this chaotic mess. And now, like I said, as an adult, the only time that I ever take a comb, not even a brush, but a big, huge, wide tooth comb to my hair is right when I get out of the shower and my hair has a ton of a specific detangling leave-in conditioner that I can use that doesn't weigh it down, right? So I can actually pick through it without pulling at it. And so, now I've learned like, hey, brushing my hair is a no-go. But as a kid, if someone would have said, stop brushing your hair, even when I tell people now, I'm like, I don't ever brush my hair, right? If I'm in the bathroom and I'm going like on my second day, this is what I do, right? I'm pulling through it very lightly with my fingers because a brush is going to make it go chaotic. And so I recognize that I have amazing hair now because I can do so much with it, right? It doesn't just lay flat. I can make it flat if I want to, but it has curl, which makes it awesome because if I want to curl it with a curling iron, it has so much volume that I can get it to hold, right? But as a kid, I hated my hair. So we just learn to fall into this scenario of like how everybody's hair is supposed to look. And so mine should look the same as well, instead of really focusing on like, oh, you know, and I don't hold any resentment against anybody, but I wish someone with my hair type and pattern would have showed me how to do my hair when I was a kiddo, and life would have been a lot easier, right? So we get into that space. We also get told to thank you. We also get told things like it's time to grow up, right? There's a point where you're like playing with things and someone tells you like, aren't you a little young? Aren't you a little old to be doing that, right? These are toxic phrases. I'm actually going to write that one down because I don't even know if I have it in my thing. Aren't you a little old to be doing that? And so we get into these phrases, um and then we start thinking to ourselves when we go to use our imagination, wait, And your subconscious comes back with that you're too old to be doing that. And so you stop. And so you just get this mashed out of you, like I said. So the connection with your intuitive or your divine center, it relies completely on your imagination. And, initially when you hear this, you're like, that sounds really silly. And once again, that just goes back to your negative core beliefs and having that all mashed out of you because you're taught that imagination is silly, but it's not. And so the more you can connect back with that imagination center, the more that you're opening up those creative flows. And it's only when you're in that really Zen space. That's why you see people that are really connected to their creative part of themselves. Like, what do we do? Sometimes we're like, oh, creative artists and people like that, they're kind of out there. They're kind of, at least that's like the cognitive belief that I had, is that real creative people and real artists are weird. I'm just telling you, like, that's what I was taught. And that's the culture that I grew up in. But really, no, they're actually connected to this beautiful ability to open that channel. And so, the thing that, I never like to come on these and not leave you with something that you can actually do to get this, but I'm going to show you this really cool exercise. Let's go to this next slide so that you can get this back for yourself. Okay. So, why are we staring at a pantry? Um and uh there's a lot going on in this picture, maybe a little too much. Now, I will tell you that I made this and I didn't have a chance to clean some of it up. So some of it is scawampus all on its own. But is what I want you to take out of this. And I'm like looking at it because sometimes it throws in some like weird stuff. But I want you to look at this, okay? So I want you to take a second, really look at it. So I want you to almost imagine you coming out of your body that you're in right now, using your imagination. I want you to imagine that you're actually standing here in this pantry kitchen, okay? And I want you to think to yourself, what can I see? And really take in all of the different colors, because now you're going to start recognizing that you can see different herbs and you can see different spices, and maybe you can see some honeycomb, and maybe you can see some cinnamon. And now I want you to take that and I want you to really look closely and think about, what can I smell? Think about those deep herbs, the aromas that are coming from some of these open jars, maybe this fresh plant that you can smell because it is a little bit rustic. Maybe you can smell some of the dust. And I want you to take it even further. What do you think is behind you? I want you to think about a fire and it's crackling and you can see little embers floating up, and you can feel the warmth on your back as you're staring at this. You can feel the warmth on your back from the fire, and that's how you know it's there. And you can smell this beautiful bubbling simmer of a soup, and it smells like roasted vegetables. And now your taste buds, you're starting to water because you can smell that beautiful smell of that soup bubbling. So, do you see how, like, the more descriptive that I start to be, the more, like, if I tell you, oh, you know, there's a lemon sitting just off to the corner and you can't quite see it. But when you look over outside of the picture, you can see this lemon on this old wooden cutting board. And you can see this knife and it's glistening with just a little bit of lemon juice. And you can smell the aroma of this fresh cut lemon as it's slowly entering your nose, and you take in a breath and it smells like fresh citrus. And now you realize that there's an orange that's just been freshly cut sitting right next to this beautiful bright lemon. And the juices are just seeping out of this orange because it's been picked right at its beautiful, ripe perfection. And you can smell now this beautiful aroma of the orange, and it's entangled with the lemon. And your taste buds are just full and you're salivating because you know how juicy this orange is. Okay. So do you see how you're literally like, how many of you, you're like your saliva, like you're actually feel like you have some extra saliva in your mouth because you're taking yourself into that space, because I do. And so, this is what I'm talking about, is that this is that intuitive center. And this is what gets taken away from us as children, because it's so naturally there that a child can describe so many beautiful things because they're using their imagination. They really do see the unicorn um out into the pasture. And I realized that I left one of my coolest pictures out that I made. It was a cute little girl with a little pony. But it's because they really are seeing it, right? They really are immense in this. And when I look back at some of the things that I used to do when I was a kid, like I used to um play restaurant, and I would turn my entire bedroom into like these little serving tables, and I would be serving Play-Doh, and where I would have a hotel, and it would be so intricate. I would have little stuffed animals with little, cute beds, and I'm sure that some adult in my life was probably like, "Why are you making a mess?" Right? There's another toxic phrase. Why are you making a mess? And so what do you do? With all of this stuff, you pull back and you become who you think you should be. And it shuts this down. And then as an adult, you have no idea how to connect to your intuitive center. You have lost your ability to make decisions based off of what's best for you, because you are completely following what you have been taught. And now, my friends, you are also in survival mode because you are facing so much resistance in your life that you literally don't want to get out of bed in the morning. It's all you can do to pull yourself up. You're putting on a mask. You're trying to look like you're somewhat coherent for your kids. Half of the time, you're feeling guilt because of how you're talking and how you're treating other people, and you are feeling like you are in an absolute chaotic mess. And even if you can pull yourself out for a moment, maybe one morning you're just feeling really good on top of it, but by afternoon, you're just like sucked back down into what I call the rabbit hole, and you're in survival mode. You literally feel like you're in this deep, dark, incredibly damp rabbit hole, and you can see some light up there, and you're sure because you've seen other people do it, and you're just constantly climbing, right? But it's like no matter how far up you make it, it's so slippery, you just fall back down, right? And so that is why I put my purpose and my passion into trying to get you out of that space. All right, so I'm going to tell you a couple of things, and we're going to show you an example. So this is why I do what I do. And I forgot that I was going to add something onto here. Um, so couple of things, right? We release negative energy from specific events. And I'm going to show you an example of this in a minute. And even because I get it, right? And I'm the worst. I don't even want to say that because I don't resonate with that word. I am the most non-traditional marketing person ever. Like, I understand that I can send out thousands of emails, and I understand that I can bombard you with everything and sales pitch, sales pitch, sales pitch, but that's not how I do things. I get my clients because I want you to resonate with my energy, and I want you to do it on your own free will, not because you're being forced or marketed in like I'm trying to sell you a Toyota Corolla, okay? Because this is not how it works. And also, that's why I try so much to give as much of my knowledge as I can to you, because even being somewhat slightly more aware of what's going on with yourself, even if it's 3% at a time, you're still growing and you're still progressing. So even if you're watching my morning videos that are usually like 30 seconds to 60 seconds, it's an aha moment for you and you don't realize it, but everything that you're learning, your subconscious is taking into account. So even if you don't think you remember what my video was about yesterday, your subconscious knows about it. And so it's chipping away little by little, getting you back to the space. So with ELV, which I'm going to show you in a second, we can release negative energy from all kinds of things. We can release toxic phrases. We can release karma that's either given or received, because you can either be the recipient or the giver of it. We release things that you absorb, right? If you're someone really, like, think of the person that means the most to you. If they call right now and tell you, oh my gosh, had this happen and it's something really traumatic, what do? You have empathy and you feel it because you're absorbing or sharing this energy with them. We release blocked emotions. So those are just the typical emotions that you're taught about: fear, worry, feeling anxious. Then we also work on inner child issues. So, Amy, what is an inner child issue? Those are just kind of where those roots start, right? As a child, maybe you were in a situation where you didn't receive the attention that you needed in the moment. As the inner child, you were told to stop pushing forward or leaning into your creativity. So all kinds of stuff. Then another example is mirror energy. It's the energy you dislike the most about yourself that you're projecting onto other people. So it's usually the things that you dislike about what other people are doing the most, which is really ironic, right? So um I was working on something today too that talked about like being jealous or judging other people, like how those are such big blockers for us because you really need to ultimately be happy for everyone else. And the reason why is because if you can't be happy for someone else, you're basically telling yourself there isn't enough to share. So if you view someone else as having more than you, then you get into this space where you're being very jealous. And that in turn tells your subconscious, well, I'm jealous because they have what I don't have, and you're not aligning with the fact that you can both have everything that you want. Like there's enough abundance for everyone, but it's a negative core belief that there isn't enough for all. And so we tend to not celebrate other people's wins because we view it as, well, if they're winning, I'm losing, which isn't true, but it's a negative energy state to be in. So then once we work through these, and you can do exercises on your own outside of what I'm going to show you in a second, by just becoming aware, like sit down with yourself, have this inner conversation and say, where do I think I have these negative core beliefs? Is this belief even mine? If it's not, like, let's say that I have a belief of uh, women can't be pilots. Do I really believe that? Well, obviously no, because I was one, but at one point in my life, I was taught or told that females cannot be military pilots, or maybe not so much the strong word of can't, but Amy, it would be so hard for you to become a military pilot. I remember basically being taught that becoming a female in the Air Force would be equivalent to me wanting to become a professional basketball player. So, that gives this perspective of I really can't do it. So, obviously I'm a barrier breaker. And the more that you tell me no, the more that I'm going to come back with a yes. And that's just how I'm designed, which brings me into this next thing: aligning with who you are. Because guess what? Not everyone is me. And I know that because I've seen my human design, and I know that my heart and my willpower center is defined, and I have the ability to give that willpower to other people. But when people are like, Amy, I was having this conversation today with someone about exercising, and they were like, well, we know you're just going to go home and exercise, even though, you're not. They said something like, oh, just go home and relax. And I was like, what now? And they said, no, I know you're going to go home and exercise. And I said, actually, I'm not going to exercise today because I do my lives on Monday, and I have um, given myself permission to not exercise on Mondays. But before I started going live again, I exercise every single day. Now, you could have people be like, that's not healthy. Okay. And I'm going to tell you straight out, that is your opinion and that's your perspective. And I exercise 7 days a week because to me, it is a very releasing, euphoric feeling that I get. Okay. And so I exercise every day because I love it. Also, when people are like, "Oh, how long have you done keto?" Do you know how much resistance I got when I started keto? What was it? 4 years, 5 years ago maybe now? When I first started doing keto, I had so many people telling me, "Oh, I know so many people that do keto and it's so great. They stick with it, and while they're on it for 3 months, they lose so much weight and it's fantastic." But the problem is that when they quit, then they just get, they put their weight right back on. Uh, Over and over again, millions of people telling me this, right? So I started on keto. My body was very resistant to it. I will tell you, it took me like 3 months for my body to kick into it, where a lot of people within like 2 weeks, they lose weight. I did not lose a single pound. So looking back, I'm not sure how I stuck with it as long as I did without getting any result from it, other than it made me start to feel good. And so because I was feeling great, I was like, I'll still do it even if I don't lose any weight because I had so much energy from it. And then I started intermittent fasting, and then boom, bada bing, right? It just turned into something that's now my lifestyle. I don't even have to think twice about it. The only time that I remember that I do keto is when someone reminds me, because, someone will bring donuts to work or something and they'll be like, well, Amy can't eat those. And it's not even a thing to me. Like I just don't even want to eat it because I know how crappy I'll feel if I do. But I also recognize that this is part of my human design. And so doing this is not as easy for other people. I actually have a post-it note right here. Things are not as simple or easy for other people. This is why they need to hear you. It's literally on a post-it note stuck to my computer. But I don't look at other people and think, oh my gosh, what is wrong with you? You're so unable to stick with things, because I understand that a lot of it is you just don't know who you are, and you're resisting and fighting yourself so much that you can't win. You just can't. And I understand that. So here's a couple of things. I have you align with your human design, or you'll end up back in a space where you're just resisting life. Okay. So, 3 examples: sleeping. Should you go to bed before or after you're tired? Have you ever even thought about that? Your human design shows you. Your human design shows you that you are designed that you should either run all of your energy out and wait until you're completely exhausted to go to bed, or you should lay down at least 30 minutes before you are exhausted in order to get the best sleep. Now, I'm going to make you really aware of something right now. What if your children are one of these versus the other, and you're forcing them to go to bed and you're not letting them burn their energy all off, and then they're not sleeping at night, and then it comes this cycle, right? And then you're like, my kid is not sleeping and they're not paying attention in school because they're so tired. Do you see how that works? Or they're not sleeping well because they do need to go to bed and lay there for 30 minutes and read a book before they can fall asleep. But we're so into this, like, my kids should go to bed at 9 and they should lay down and they should go to sleep. And we can't even do that as adults, right? So you are designed to either start to wind down and do something for 30-ish minutes before you fall asleep that's a quiet activity, or you're designed to literally be completely exhausted before your head hits the pillow to get a really good night's sleep. Okay? Making decisions off of initial feeling. And I got super distracted, so I apologize. I don't apologize. I actually don't care if I have spelling errors, because I just don't care. But I could, because I didn't come back and look at any of this. Okay, making decisions off of your initial feeling. So that gut feeling, like, right? Someone asks you a decision, boom, there is an answer there. Whether you recognize it or not, because that's another thing that gets taken away from us, is as kids, we have this beautiful uh-huh or uh-uh. So if I say, Tommy, do you want a grilled cheese? Kids usually will be like, uh-huh or uh-uh. And then you're like, use proper words. It's yes or no. And so our natural inner answering system is uh-huh or uh-uh or hmm. And hmm is the I'm not sure. And so we take that away because we tell our kids to stop saying uh-huh or uh-uh because it's annoying. And so then we stop listening to that. But you really do. If I ask you a question and you're listening, you'll hear yourself say inner mm-hmm or and it's a beautiful way to make decisions. But some of you are designed to make decisions like that. And some of you are designed to make decisions off of needing. And there's more than 2 of these, but I'm just giving you an example. Some of you are designed to make decisions off of an emotional cycle, and recognizing that you should not ever make a decision when you're feeling in the really high of it. And you should never make a decision when you're feeling in the really low of it. So, example, let's say that you're faced with a situation of changing jobs. And one moment you're like thinking about the benefits. Maybe it pays better. You're thinking about the benefits and you're like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. This is X amount extra if I get this job. And I want you to even take it to the space of you've actually been offered the job. So you have a job you like, you've been offered a new job. Okay. So you're in this space where you're looking at the benefits and you're like so excited because this is going to make more money. And right, what have we been taught? The more money you make, the more successful you are. And the more money you make, the more you have. And the more money you make, the more happy you are. And so you're living off this negative core belief, and then you kind of like think about it, and the next day, it's kind of feeling sort of neutral, and you're like, I don't know. And the next morning you wake up and you have this pit in your stomach because you start like freaking out, and you're like, oh, if I go to a new job, and maybe you don't like the uniforms that they wear. Maybe you're not sure because you don't want to leave your job because, oh my gosh, my best friend Sally works where I work now. And if I go to this new job, I'm not going to have Sally anymore. And you just start fretting, right? You start going into this, the commute is longer, and um what if I don't like it, and maybe my boss is going to be mean, and you just now, so right, you can see like you've now transitioned to the very low space. So some people have to be very careful because when they make a decision, they need to feel the really high, they need to feel the neutral, they need to feel the really low, and then they're going to come back into a neutral space. And that's the zone where you should make the decision. But you have to go through these, because if you don't allow yourself to do the high, the middle, and the low, you will make a decision that you are not aligned with based off of being in an emotional state. And so it's understanding these types of things. Now, when you know how you should make decisions, it becomes incredibly easy. So the other day, someone said, oh, you have a decision coming up. How are you going to know what you should do? And I said, oh, I don't even have to think about it. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, because I'm so aligned with being on roll for my purpose and understanding how I am supposed to make decisions that I will know immediately which decision is correct. I won't have to think about it. I won't have to fret about it. And even if I do notice, once I make that decision, if my cognitive mind and my ego starts coming into play, I'll be able to shut it down because I'll say, oh, that's just the whatever creeping in. That's my ego coming in. And I'm not going to listen to it because it doesn't know anything. It's just trying to keep me safe. And when I live in a safe space, I don't progress. Okay. So the other one is having your own willpower versus needing to absorb it. And that's another one. Some people are, oh, but it's only like 20% of the population has their ability to make their willpower. And those are the people that you watch that you're just like, I don't know how this person does it, because they're so capable of sticking with what they say they're going to stick with, that you just watch in awe because you're like, I don't understand how every time this person sets their mind to something, they make it happen. And it's just because that's how they're designed. But the cool thing is you realize that, and you don't have that ability, you surround yourself with those people because you can absorb that. It's no different than when you go to a speaking event or some kind of conference. Remember back in the day when I used to sell Pampered Chef, and I still love that stuff, but I would go sit in a conference and just be like, oh my gosh, when I get home from Chicago, I'm going to blow this up. I'm going to make my business the biggest that I can. And right, you take that energy home, and after like a little bit of time, it starts to like wear away. And then you realize that you get back into ruts. And it's just because you're not around that energy anymore. And so you get sliding back into the place that feels comfortable for you. Okay, there was something else. Ooh, I had another example. What was it? I don't know at the moment. Maybe it will come back here. Okay, we're gonna hang on for 1 second. I need to pull up my other um ELV document. So let me get out of all this fantasticalness, and we're gonna share the screen again, picking a window. Now, a little bit different because I wanted to be able to explain this to you a little bit more than I have before. So I actually did the releases, and I'm going to talk you through them so that this can be more of an explanatory. All right, here we go. So I'm going to share my screen again. Let's make it a little bit bigger. You don't need to be able to see this. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Let me turn my camera back on. All right. So the way that this works basically is using that intention and that intuitive ability and connection, right? I love energy. I love energy research because I'm so data driven. And some of that is my human design, and some of that is coming through the fact of like all the schooling that I've gone through, right? And as a master's with education, I had to do so much research that was backed by peer reviewed articles. So I'm also just being in the corporate world that I'm in. I can't ever just say, this is what I think. I mean, I can say this is what I think, but if I come to the table and say, hey, this is what I think, and here's the data that shows that I like actually can support what I'm telling you, people listen, right? Because it's back to that like, oh, experts know things. And so data is something that experts are driven by, and you have that experience to come back with it. So I'm not really good at just like, well, I think this is the way this works. Now, I know this is the way it works because I watch it every day in my practice and I see my clients have amazing results off of it. I love how my office is warm. And so by the time that I'm done with my live, like you can see that it looks like I've been out shoveling snow. But it's just because I have to shut the door. So it gets really hot in here. But I literally can feel it. By the time I'm done, I like burst out of the office and I'm like, it feels like a sauna in here. Okay. So my client is a female. She's age 27. When you do a session with me, you can tell me as little or as much as you want. So sometimes when I have tons of details, I just narrow it down a little bit. So these were her tops. So this is where I set the intention and I tell her, like, hey, when we do this session, we're going to set the intention to be able to work on these things. And also, by the way, I do this all by email. So you don't even have to be on the phone. You don't have to be on a video. You don't have to be on anything. We just do it. You send it to me. I make this beautiful connection. We set the intention. Energy has no limits. You can literally connect to someone if they're open to doing so. This is why, like, a lot of times you can feel the energy of other people when they walk into a room and they're really angry, or you have connections with family members because you can do this. I can even teach you how to do this with intention. Okay. So lots of talking. All right. So feeling unwanted, unable to move forward with her business, lots of procrastination. So I do these in sets, and you typically get about 7 sets. Okay. So I'm going to show you this set. So when I say set, this is what I'm talking about. It's this whole long layer of thing. And we're going to actually start at the bottom because it makes more sense when I tell you about the bottom. So I always come up with this foundational thing. Now, you'll hear people in my realm talk about muscle testing, which I can also teach you how to do. So when I first started doing this work, I would muscle test. So muscle testing is an amazing phenomenon that works on the kinesthetic system. But you can basically ask yourself a question. Now, people do this different ways. This is the way that I find it to work. You can also do things called sway tests, which is really cool. If you watch someone, you have them close your eyes. If you ask them a question that is a yes or a no, just make sure if you try this at home that your person that you're talking to doesn't get dizzy when they shut their eyes. Okay. Because sometimes some people, when they stand and they shut their eyes, they can get kind of dizzy. But if you have someone close their eyes, you can ask them, is your name, and then like say that their name is Jamie. If you say, is your name Jamie, when they hear that, they'll slightly move forward or backwards. Everybody's yes or no can be slightly different. So, like, my yes is forward and my no is backwards, but theirs could be backwards. Um, but you can watch them, they'll sway slightly. And it could be just a tiny little sway, but they will sway. It's really amazing. So, anyways, obviously, when I'm working with people, I'm not standing swaying. So that would be really distracting. But when I first started, I would muscle test like this. So I would say, is my name Amy? And I get a yes, right? If I pull, there's quite a bit of resistance, but I'm also holding my fingers very lightly. If I say, is my name James? I get this little break. And I know if you've never seen this before, you're like, whatever. But I remember the first time I saw muscle testing, because you can also hold your hand out like this. I'm going to put it into the view of the camera. And another person can do this and ask you questions. And if they say yes or a no question, your hand will have resistance or not. And I had this happen with me when I had a severe stomach issue and I had given up on like medical stuff. And I went to what we called, honestly, the people around here, we're calling them the witch doctors. And they're the cutest ladies, but they just specialized in energy work. And that was the first time I came across energy work. And I'll tell you what, I had spent literally $500,000 trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Those ladies gave me some pumpkin herb and charcoal to take, and they had me hold the bottles in my hand and they were muscle testing. And I was like, what is this? And no matter what, I couldn't hold my arm up. And so they were putting things in my hand. And if it wasn't what I needed, my arm would go down. And I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. I actually sent my husband at the time in there because I was like, you got to go try this. He was having some kind of issue. And I was like, go see these ladies. It was the coolest thing ever. But, anyways, I muscle test like this. But then after I've done this enough and I've worked on the things like I showed you a second ago, I no longer have to. I just channel. So when I sit down to work on my client, I just see, Energy around being in alignment with your purpose. That's the best thing that we should come up with. And I do have a Google document where I've tried to keep track of all of this so that my practitioners can muscle test their way through it. I think it's like 150 pages at this point. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this works. So, my client here, we're going to go down to the bottom. So these are what I call the foundational issues. These are all of those layers. Remember when we talked about layers that kiddos have, or layers that attach to you through your life? These are all these layers that have built up. Now, when these layers build up, they reflect into physical problems in your body. So these are all energies. I like to think of them as like little chemicals or whatever works for you. There is no right or wrong way to imagine this. But I just like to think of it as it almost creates an energy blood clot, an energy clot. Just like if you had a blood clot, think of how that stops your blood from going, and eventually, right, it takes you down. So all of these things connected create this like little energy block in your body, and then when that happens, then we start seeing things in the physical body become misaligned and we start having problems. So when someone, also you'll see, we'll talk about this, but I wanted to do this beforehand so that I can explain it to you instead of just me here trying to see it as we go. Okay, so she has an event, and this is actually at age 23. So this is a past business idea that she didn't continue with. Okay. Now, sometimes when we go through these, they all make sense. And sometimes they're completely don't make any sense at all, as far as they're not like linearly aligned. So if I believe these actually all were, but this is why this process works so well, is because your subconscious can layer things on top of each other that actually have no um time frame. They, as in like they didn't happen at the same time. So you could have things layered in that something happened when you were 5, 17, 32, maybe when you were born. It's like think about all the trauma you go through when you're born. Like you can even do a whole session on like your birth energy, because babies go through a lot when they're born, and mamas. Okay. So this one is an event. So she has some underlying things that are all like compiling on each other. Okay. Also, if you tend to have a place in your body that you're like, oh my gosh, because mine is my sinuses. Anytime I have something happen, this is where I collect my negative energy. 100%. I will get a sinus block. And then I know, oh my gosh, Amy, you have something going on and you haven't been working on yourself, because this is where it comes. Always. Okay. Okay, toxic phrase. A toxic phrase is something that you hear. It can be directed straight at you. It can just be something you overhear. You could even hear it on the radio. It could be something that you heard your mom say to your sister. It can be something that you heard a teacher say to a student. It can be something you read. It's just some kind of toxic phrase that becomes a truth for your subconscious. So her toxic phrase was, last time you tried this, what happened? Makes sense, right? So you can see with this one, it's totally possible that these are kind of in a related thing, because she has a past business idea that she didn't continue with. Now she's like, oh, last time you tried this, what happened? Like I've had this happen before. I'm an entrepreneur by nature, and I've had multiple businesses in my past. And if I want to, I can choose to look at them as failures. Or if I want to, I can choose to look at them as beautiful stepping stones to get me to where I am right now. Right. But if you view your past business adventure as a failure, then you have this little voice in your head that so matter when you try a new business, you're like, oh, I'm going to fail at this. I'm going to fail at this because it's just like last time. Okay. We do that with relationships too, right? I'm certain that this guy or this girl, this can't be that this is the same. This is what happens to me every time I get into a relationship. Well, you're so certain that this is going to happen that that's the same thing you attract. So every single time you get into a relationship with that same type of person, that's because that's what you're magnetizing yourself to attract. Okay. She has some negative energy here, attachment to investing money, creating a negative result. So, also, when you start a new business, do you invest money into it? And now you have it in your head that if I invest money into something, I will get a negative result out of it. A blocked emotion of fear, some negative energy, feeling responsible for a financial stress. Then this one's interesting because she has some ancestral energy. So, this is stuff we inherit. Being denied an education. So this is on her mom's side, back 17 generations. The cool thing, or the beautiful, let's use that word. The beautiful thing about ancestral energy is that when you release ancestral energy. It releases it not only from you, but it releases it from everyone. So it's almost like you're breaking that generational curse, and you're providing this beautiful blessing to everyone else by releasing this because you're stopping it. So I like to think of it as like, oh my goodness, your ancestors are on the other side, literally being like, finally, we're releasing this so that we don't keep watching everyone else go through it, and we're not passing this on anymore. So that is a beautiful blessing that you're offering. Negative core belief. I have to go to school for this, right? How much do you think that plays into stuff? If you're trying to do something and you're like, oh, for example, like you can see I've started to dive into doing some stuff with creating graphics, and you can go to my Facebook page. I haven't advertised it a lot, but because I'm still in the process of getting it all together. But Soul Delicious Designs is my new Facebook page. And I'm creating all of my graphics now instead of using graphics that I'm borrowing from everyone. Like I'm using my own process to create my own graphics for my memes. And so, but I could be like, oh, I can't do this because I didn't go to school to be a graphic designer. No, right? But think about how that plays into it. A negative core belief also adding on to that. I have to go to school to be successful. So I know because she's told me that she doesn't have a background in an educational background past high school. So these are all underlying things that have now added into back to that beginning energy around being in alignment with her purpose. So these are all blocking her from progressing in her purpose. So once we get all those cleared, then the beautiful thing starts to happen if we start balancing out the physical body. And so she has a pathogen. So lots of people have parasite, not lots of people. Let me rephrase that. Everyone. I know it sounds disgusting, but literally everyone's body has parasites. So we're clearing those away, and then we're balancing things in her body. Sometimes I always tell my clients, I don't always know what all these are because I don't need to, right? So I'm definitely not like a trained medical professional by any means, but I can muscle test my way through systems to know, like, okay, we're going to balance your coronary arteries. We're balancing a visceral layer of your pericardium. We're balancing the myocardium. We're balancing some epicardial adipose tissue. So I do know enough to know that these are all in the area of the heart. We're balancing connection in her spine. This is specifically the T8 to the T9. Now, I want you to think for a second, okay? Let's say hypothetically, because she did say that she has a problem with some pain that sporadically comes and goes in her back, okay? Let's say that you go to somewhere to traditional and you say, I have this pain in my back. What are they going to do? They're going to send you to a back specialist. Do you think the back specialist is going to take any time to look into that? Maybe you have something also that this is affecting in your heart. I'm going to go with no. So that's why this is so beautiful. It's such a beautiful process, and why we can be working on something. And sometimes I'll have my client be like, this made absolutely no cognitive sense at all. And that's one thing I always tell my practitioners, like, hey, if you're trying to make cognitive sense out of what you're finding, that is your biggest downfall. Because when people ask me, like, Amy, how are you so good at this? And how do you just see so much? I tell them it's because I literally disconnect my cognitive brain. I can type up a session, and when I'm done, send the notes, and I will 100% tell you I have no idea what I typed. I have no idea what I typed because my cognitive mind isn't involved in it at all. Sometimes I go back and read things and I'm like, dang, that's really cool. Or my client will bring something up and ask a question. I literally have to physically go back in the notes to find it so that I can then reconnect and make sense of it if they have a question about it, because I just have no idea. Okay. We balance the liver meridian. So, meridians in the body, they are just like the parallel to the fluid and the blood flow of your body. So they flow through your body just like those same types of channels in parallel to things, and they're associated with specific things. And so we're balancing the liver meridian. Now we're balancing a tooth. It's number 7, the top left canine balance. So when someone tells me they have a toothache, I'm like, always, huh, I wonder what kind of underlying issue you have going on, because you will have your teeth are connected to organs, glands, hormones, meridians, places in your spine. Like each one each tooth is connected to like over 10 different places in your body. So teeth come up a lot. Um, and then we also have the gallbladder meridian. We also have, and these teeth just happen to be parallel or opposites. So both on the top, the teeth on each side, top right and top left canine, we balanced. Then we have neuron transportation of serotonin and also the blood brain barrier that we're balancing. And so these are all things that are helping to align her back to her purpose. Now, as I continue with her session, like I'll continue to look for energies still affecting this. But as I mentioned, there's 7 different blocks that you get when you do your email session with me. And they're all starting with some type of specific question that we're diving into. And then at the end, I always do an affirmation. So we always put you in alignment with feeling or with whatever is resonating the most. When I do your session, it'll be very specific to you. So for hers, it was, I'm in alignment with the laws of universal energy to freely see, feel, and embrace my divine purpose. I release any resistance that's creating a block for me to feeling my full value. So when we take out all these negatives, we have the ability to put in positives. And so that's where this goes in. And then also, because you get it in your email notes, you can reference back to it. I just have to tell you, like, blessed be, because it's such a beautiful thing. And I feel absolutely overwhelmingly blessed to be able to provide this knowledge to other people. So that is literally like sharing is where I just love it, because the more that you're aware of it, I mean, if I hadn't have come across energy healing when I did, I can't even tell you where I think I would be right now. Like, I don't even want to imagine where I would be right now, because it wouldn't be living this beautiful life that I've created based off of releasing all these limitations and allowing myself to really be who I am. Even though I'm also going to tell you that coming into my space and being who I am, I've I've created a lot of people that don't like me. And that's okay, because I just realized that we're on a different vibrational level and people can be really focused on their physical aspects of their life. And I'm really focused on living from my subconscious and not focusing on like all this physical stuff. Right. And so I have learned, even though I have been guilty of calling people out and creating chaos and being mean and doing things. And I acknowledge that is not the place to be. So I'm not seeking revenge like I used to, and it's put me at a much higher level, which is amazing, because I see my work progressing when I get into that space. And so now I just don't worry about it. If someone doesn't like me, that's okay, because my voice isn't for you to hear. And that's fine, because my purpose isn't to make anyone hear me. And my purpose is to have my tribe hear me. And that's all that matters. Okay. All right, you guys, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your night. I will see you at the same time next week. I did place my link to my email, so I will start sending out those emails starting on Sunday, and it's going to have specifics in it that you can do to align with that energy for that week that's going to be the most beneficial for you. So I'll give you a journaling idea. And it's going to be just based off of where the energy is for that week. And so if you subscribe to my email list, you can watch for those to come out on Sunday. You guys, I'm sending you beautiful vibes for the rest of the week. And thank you for hopping on.